On tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs Related Podcast, the Cubs beat Paul Skenes to take 2 of 3 in Pittsburgh ahead of their first meeting with the Brewers this weekend. We'll talk about Seiya Suzuki, Kyle Tucker, everything involving the Chicago Cubs on tonight's episode of the CHGO Cubs Related Podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs Related Podcast, driven by Toyota. Let's go places and bet 365, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary. Use code CHGO365 at sign up. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. Welcome into our weekly edition of the CHGO Cubs Related Podcast. And how nice, Brendan, to be coming to everybody. They played early on the East Coast, but after a series win. Can you believe that we are talking about this team being so far above 500 with that schedule? If you had told me 3 months ago that we'd be sitting going into May 2nd, almost at the 20-win marker, I would have been floored with surprise. Not that I was dampening my expectations, but they're doing this against the league's best teams, Corey. It's wild. Yes, the league's best teams and also the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, pitcher, Paul Skenes.
Yeah, so plenty to talk about here. I think as far as specific topics, talk a little bit about Seiya Suzuki. I know Brendan wants to talk about some of the pitchers the Cubs have added to their depth recently. Chris Flexen, Drew Pomeranz, who we've seen. We'll talk about Colin Rea again, and we'll talk about the Cubs catching tandem, Matt Shaw. It's ambitious, Brendan. We're not going to get all of this in 6 minutes.
Well, it's up to you.
You're
going to try. Guy. I'm just the cleanup guy over here.
But to start things off, obviously the Cubs, since we last spoke to everybody, they dropped the series, a tough series against the Phillies, and then take 2 of 3 here against the Pirates, 9-0 on Tuesday, lose 4-3, a frustrating game on Wednesday, but then the Cubs bounce back and beat Paul Skenes and the Pirates 8-3 here on Thursday. And I think the main thing for me, Brendan, that Philly series was frustrating. That's a good team, kind of not playing at their best, but that's a very talented roster over there, a team that maybe the Cubs, they will see them again, but maybe they see them again in a more significant capacity sometime later in the season. I'm already looking ahead to October, Brendan.
I can tell.
This series against the Pirates, to me, especially after the way they lost that game on Wednesday, it really represented at least a hope. It's only our first series like this, but a hope that perhaps we will see something different from the Chicago Cubs than we have in the last couple of years. And we've seen teams get off to good starts, but kind of fall apart in that May, June area. We've seen them play down to competition. We've seen them do poorly in their own house against the NL Central. And this was a really good start to right that. They, a close game, an error, a bad bounce off Dansby's foot, et cetera, kind of gets that game away from you. And then, of course, I don't know really how any of those players expected to play after the situation in Pittsburgh. And obviously all the thoughts with that fan. It's a terrible situation. But for them to respond, especially against Paul Skenes, to win this series, win a series on the road, and take a series from a team that, again, frankly, you're better than the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can't chalk up wins. You can't demand a sweep, but they're series you should be winning. And for the Cubs to come back and respond that way, it's something good teams do, Brendan, and maybe not something we would have seen different versions of this team do in the last couple of years.
And they're still doing it with offense top to bottom. That's the most encouraging part. Of course, Kyle Tucker's stats are where you want them to be, but we're discussing Carson Kelly's numbers.
The cleanup hitter.
Among those with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. It's wild, the output he's showing right now. And then when he's not playing, Miguel Amaya is still carrying over those second half adjustments into this season. And Pete Crow Armstrong's literally still on that 8+ WAR pace. So it's the bulk production from the team that is leaving me encouraged. And I imagine all these other fans encouraged as well, even though third base remains an ongoing experimental process, but the other guys in the lineup are just exceeding expectations to an extreme way.
Yeah, and it pairs well. Of course, the next test, kind of how do you fare on the road in Milwaukee against a team that the division has obviously run through for the past few years, and we'll see how the Cubs handle that. But a really nice response from them on Thursday to win this series. Always feels good to get back in the series W column. So I think, generally those are going to be the thoughts. And, of course, look, there's ever evolving issues. They're rotating guys in the bullpen. The third base situation continues to be something to monitor. If we have time in this episode, we can talk about like how much more runway they're going to give Justin Turner, who has shown them basically nothing at this point.
Your guy, Justin Turner.
Now hold on when you say that.
Your guy.
Even when I was glad about the signing, I said, if he looks 40, act like he looks 40 and move on. And so I, even from the jump, I was like, hey, if this isn't working, act like it. So we'll see how much longer that is. But that's not where I want to start as we jump into some of our more specific topics here. I want to start with Seiya Suzuki. We've talked about him a lot, but somehow I do feel like his overall performance is underrated by folks. And I think there's any number of ways you can look at it. His slash line right now is bordering on absurd. And he obviously had a big series here in Pittsburgh. But I in looking at some of the stuff and talking with our friend of the show, Matt Clapp at the Blog Finds on Twitter, he was putting out some numbers and I'm looking at them now. They're not updated to include his game on Thursday. So obviously these numbers would go up. Fangraphs doesn't update the year-to-year splits that quickly. But since August 1st of 2023, Brendan, Seiya Suzuki amongst qualified hitters in Major League Baseball, WRC plus, he ranks 9th, OPS 8th, weighted on base average 9th. So top 10 in all of those categories. And that does not include his game on Thursday, which was a really nice game.
It sure was.
I bring that up to say, like, I don't know what threshold every individual person's going to have to make like sweeping declarations. Is it a year of solid performance, 5 years of a certain performance? It's up to you. But as we sit in this moment, I feel pretty comfortable like saying this, Brendan, like Seiya Suzuki is one of the best hitters in baseball.
Well, it's been 2 years almost.
It's almost 1,000 plate appearances.
That's right.
In that sample that I gave you, not just his career.
It's crazy. I also think in a weird way, there's another level to Seiya's performance. That's how crazy this is. The reason is that when looking at his strikeout rates and his contact rate, I've said this for years, they do not align. He makes 78% contact. That's better than league average, but his strikeout rate currently is almost 30% worse than league average. Typically, you have some balance with that. But if you look at guys who make Seiya type contact, well, their strikeout rate is around 20 to 22%. Then the gears start churning in my brain. Okay, well, what if he just starts making more contact? Well, he's currently batting .287 with 7 home runs. He currently has a .398 weighted on base average. Just give me a few more batted balls, and that goes up north of 400. Pair that with Kyle Tucker, pair that with Barry Bonds, Carson Kelly, and an emerging PCA, and you got quite literally the best hand in the middle order in the league.
I do.
I'm getting carried away.
I do want to adjust that, though. You're reading his numbers before today. He has 9 home runs and a .295 batting.
That's right. I'm just making sure you're awake over there.
Yes, I am paying attention.
Yeah, it's crazy though that even with those numbers, you still get that like misalignment that I've been focusing on. Because if you had told me that we would be seeing the power this early on and that .295 batting average, right? I would have guessed, well, he's now like striking out less, and he's not doing that yet. So that's what leaves me encouraged that there's still like a little bit of a next level for him.
And, just to give you some context, I said all those numbers were in the top 10, but even if you're not a fan of those stats, one of them was OPS. I feel like that's innocuous enough. But the players around Seiya Suzuki, when you're looking at these numbers since August of 2023, the players closest to him in these rankings, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Yordan Alvarez, like that's the company we're talking about. And he's been doing this for almost 2 full seasons now. I'm, interested too. There's not really a way to like quantify this, but interesting, of course, now, like we've seen flashes of this before, certainly, but now kind of focused solely on hitting, full-time DH. Hopefully that keeps him healthier, something that obviously has derailed some of these moments before. And maybe just like locking in on hitting will allow him to potentially get to that next level, Brendan. But I wanted to start there. He's throughout his time with the Cubs has had moments of being divisive and, moments where he does look kind of lost. But really, since like Ross sat him down in 23 for those several games,
David Ross his kudos,
the genius David Ross that he is. He's been, again, I'm very comfortable saying this, like one of the best hitters in baseball. The numbers back that up, whatever you want to look at, like he's there. So it's really exciting. And again, as we've talked about, pairing him as a complement, although recently he's been more the focal point, but a complement to Kyle Tucker is just brilliant. It is finally kind of having the Cubs lineup have that, like, this should be inducing fear into pitchers as they try to navigate some of these hitters. And, something too, Brendan, like, I don't know if they're going to change and go to the ABS system or whatever they're going to do. He's doing all of this and putting up these offensive numbers, and he must lead the league in bad strike calls.
It's because he takes pitches too well. I genuinely believe this. If you look at the way Seiya Suzuki takes a pitch on the block, it looks no different than him taking a pitch 10 feet outside because he sees it so well. Yeah. I honestly think it like tricks the umpire into thinking that it's like down the middle.
So like, look, if that ever gets sorted out and he's not getting rung up on these bogus calls, these numbers should be even better.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a very exciting development. I said this before, and I know Cody was on this train, but say a defender since day one. I believed in this moment. I believed we would get here. And so it's very exciting. But yeah, look, a 2-homer game on Thursday to pace the Cubs offense. One of them obviously coming off Paul Skenes. It's impressive. It's an impressive showing from Seiya Suzuki.
What I love most about this middle of the order right now is the contrast of what we've seen in previous eras for the Cubs, even dating back to like 2000s. The contrast is that this era, this version of the Cubs, the power comes without the strikeouts. And for years in the mid 2010s, even winning the World Series, which the Cubs did, by the way, we saw an emphasis on trying to tone down the strikeouts, trying to create more contact. And we saw that manifested through constant hitting coach changes, which ironically now John Malley's back with the Cubs 10 years later. But this era, you're having Kyle Tucker hit 7 home runs with striking out only in 12% of his plate appearances. You're having Seiya Suzuki make above average contact with that power output. And I guess now you look at PCA's contact oriented approach and how that's leading to all the offense we see. And it's just piling on. Ian Happ, more contact. The very contact less problems we had 10 years ago don't seem to be there. It almost seems like it's too good to be true. That's how good I'm feeling right. It seems too good to be true that these guys are performing at this point.
Well, and we'll hit our first ad break in a second here, but and I don't think this is the first time we've seen it, though. I can't remember if the order was the same, but I got to tell you, like, I'm sitting there, during the workday, I have the Cubs on my other monitor, and Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki going back to back. It's a beautiful sight.
It's
Brendan.
beautiful.
It's really beautiful. I can hear Ron Santo in the back of my head screaming, "Back to back jacks, Pat." And it's just gorgeous watching them go up there and feast on pitchers. It's truly a beautiful sight.
Beautiful sight. Let's take our ad break here. A lot to talk about, and we'll continue what is a fun conversation we're having. A lot of fun conversations between you and I recently, Corey. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping, a place where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. It's your one-stop shop for all your cannabis needs. Sunnyside has an expertly curated menu with over 100 strains to choose from, plus easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Sunnyside is Illinois' favorite dispensary with locations in the city, including Wrigleyville and River North, to the suburbs in Champaign, South Beloit, and more. We know you'll love Cresco and FloraCal's incredible quality and consistent products. If you're not familiar with these, if you're a pro as well, they've got you covered either way. They have an expertly curated menu. They have wellness advisors, staff picks collection as well. So visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions do apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 or over or Illinois medical card holders. Bet365, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code CHGO365, deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. With the Bet365 early payout offer, you're a winner if your team goes 5 runs ahead with an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. Download the app and use code CHGO365 when you sign up. And breaking news from Bet365, again, new customers, $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use code CHGO365, deposit $10 and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and over. If you or somebody knows a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER in-app only.
All right, Brennan. So generally on the offense, too, especially in this Pittsburgh series, I wanted to commend them. They need my commendation.
Of course,
just a really good effort. Obviously, I think everybody was frustrated in that game on Thursday. Skenes walks the bases loaded. Michael Busch swings at the first pitch and grounds into the double play. At the time, it felt like one of those we're going to look back at that. But the work that they did, they made him throw a lot of pitches in that game. Relative to not being on pace to get through 8 innings or anything like that. And obviously, they attack him. They had 3 home runs in the same inning. They capitalize on that. But then even later in the game, as the game shrunk a little closer in those later innings, opening it up, giving the bullpen a little more room, giving them some breathing room so that they could kind of feel a little more comfortable. Just a really nice effort. And, obviously coming on the heels of scoring 9 runs on Monday, just some really good stuff from this offense. And that game on Thursday in particular was something that felt impressive. You're going into that game feeling like, man, we might only have a few chances going up against a guy like Skenes. And they made him work and they got to him eventually. And then they got to the bullpen when they needed some insurance runs. But what I want to ask you specifically was the magic all just in moving Dansby Swanson to the 8-hole? Is that what really was missing from this team? 1 for 3 with a homer on Tuesday, 3 for 4 on Wednesday, and then 2 for 4 with another homer on Thursday. Just had to move him down. That's it.
That's all it takes. Take notes, Craig Counsell, for your future moves and decisions. Dansby Swanson's been a lightning rod for many reasons, right? The defense, everyone loves the defense. The offense output has been below many expectations, but in reality, he's kind of been within this range of likely expectations. This year has been an extreme swing up. It's been an extreme swing down. Now we're going right back up. But the question I have is, how different does this look from previous years? How different does Dansby Swanson look now versus last year when he was at his low point playing through an injury that required core surgery? And the answer to this, I'll show a graph right here, is that his exit velocity has gone through these extreme wobbles. Okay. So on the left, we can see his exit velo was lower before the All-Star break, peaked up towards the back end of the year, and kind of dropped back down towards the end of the season. This aligns with what we've seen. Now, to start the year in 2025, as we saw in the first few games, he was hitting bombs. He was leading the league for a couple of weeks in home runs, and then it went straight back down. Right now, it's going right back up. But what I want to focus on is that these peaks here, Corey, they're higher than at any similar stretch of 25 batted balls in play than last year. So what does this mean? It means that in Dansby Swanson's current self, the brief spurts he's showing was not like what we saw last year. So to me, that's encouraging, right? Like you want to have someone who just came back from core surgery showing a little bit more of his self, right? And so what we're seeing now is that he is looking healthier. It's being represented by fast, twitchier spurts, more spurts of high exit velo. And I think as the league and as the season progresses and adjusts and you go back and forth, naturally they find their balance point. And I do think we're going to get to that point where all of a sudden we look up at Dansby's Fangraphs page, that baseball reference page, and he's batting 230, 250 on pace for 20-25 home runs with that defense like we see every single year.
Just a case study in like, again, he is who he is. If, we talk about this all the time. If you're waiting for him to be the heart of the order guy, it's not going to happen. That's not who he is.
He was batting cleanup, 3 years ago. Crazy.
Great. But, he's also not as bad as he's looked at times. He's pretty solidly around league average guy, sometimes a bit above, sometimes a tick below. Like that's just where he's going to live.
Even your Corey, to interrupt right there, his expected weighted on base average, if you like those expected batted ball profile stats, 335. Okay. So there is some like discrepancy. Doesn't mean he's looked good lately. He hasn't, right?
Yeah.
But the early signs where I showed that like high exit velo graph, some of the base hits didn't fall. So he has overall looked okay in the bulk sum.
Just a tale of, talk about like a tale of two series. I mean, there are moments in that Phillies series where he just looked so awful. And I remember sitting at one of those games, like looking at the numbers on the screen. I'm like, Dansby, brother, I'll defend you, but you can't be rocking a 580 OPS. That's tough for me to,
is that what you told him?
Comes in this Pittsburgh series, moves down in the order. And, hitting the ball really well, obviously. And, credit too, like, obviously he's a professional. Like, we don't need to pat these guys on the back for this stuff. But like, handles being dropped to the 8 spot. You don't hear a peep from him. You don't see any like change in, but he's a professional. And I give Craig credit. This is one of the things we talked last week about the front office being aggressive with some of the moves, giving relievers a few opportunities. If it's not there, we got to try someone else, et cetera, et cetera. Goes for Craig too. Like, a lot of people, the calls were getting pretty loud to see some change in the lineup. And we saw it, and he got pretty out there on Tuesday, putting Carson Kelly in the cleanup spot. He hits another homer.
His numbers are absurd. Like
it is interesting. We can talk about that too, but just credit to Craig, like for at least being flexible and being like, all right, like maybe he's, I don't want to say stubborn, but like his process is his process. He's going by the numbers. He's going by these guys' track record. And I know it's easy to be impatient with that sometimes, but there were, and that was one of those things where like Dansby hitting 5 was one of those where it's like, yeah, I defer to the track record too, but this is getting kind of old.
What about Justin Turner batting cleanup?
Well, well, like I said, the question is not should Justin Turner be batting anywhere near cleanup or anything like that. It's a question of should he be on this roster anymore? He's just not showing you anything. Like he had a solid second half last year, was good. I think 115-ish WRC plus against lefties and righties. But he's just not showing you anything. And
does he even have an extra base hit this year? I'm going to look this up as you continue your thoughts.
He did it recently, but he hadn't for a while.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to add, I have been looking at Justin Turner's stats because I'm also kind of miffed that he's on this team. You know how there's hard contact and soft contact?
Yeah.
Well, 70% of his contact is medium.
Not good.
So I don't know. Just wanted to share that.
Not
I found
good.
that really impressive that he's just probably the best Major League Baseball hitter at hitting the ball.
Good for him.
kind of like 85
Kind
miles
of
per
okay,
hour.
yeah.
He's the best at that, at least. No extra base hits, by the way. I just checked. No extra base hits.
It's one of those things where they obviously like him in the clubhouse. They had a vision for what this would look like. But as I said when they signed it, and I understood that vision, but the guy's 40, and sometimes those skills just go like that. We all watched it happen with Yan Gomes. Had a great season, came back the next year, and it was just gone. It just kind of goes that quickly.
I'll be honest with you. I could look like an idiot in 2 months. He may turn the corner. I hated that signing. I really did.
You said that from the beginning. Yeah,
that sign $6 million on a 40-year-old hitter who is not a Hall of Famer. Look in the history of those signings. Every single productive 40-year-old is either on steroids or in the Hall of Fame. So unless
Cody would tell you to get Justin Turner on the roids, I mean, that's the solution.
That's what it involves. But it's like
we'll see. I think the leash has got to be pretty short. I think it's one of those.
I want to cut the leash right now. I'm serious.
I know that, but they're going to be thinking, if we can unlock that like solid enough veteran, like we like him in the clubhouse,
we got no extra base hits.
Possible. I'm fed up with it. I'm fine if they made a move tomorrow. And I thought the process was fine, but as I said, if he looks 40, you got to acknowledge that. And 50. I don't know how much longer they're going to let that go.
Craig Counsell looks younger than Justin Turner, dude.
He might be.
I swear to God.
Before we hit our second ad break here, let's quickly talk about the catcher thing. The one thing I noticed, at least with Carson Kelly, I mean, aside from him, loosely looking like vintage Barry Bonds for the start of this season, as we've said before, like even if he comes back to earth, as obviously I expect he will, at least to some degree, the fact that you've gotten basically a month of this production from him is a massive lift to this team. We've seen some real bad bottom of the orders from this team in past years. And to get that kind of production that you've gotten from Carson Kelly through this month, where like just amongst some of these hitters, he's like near the top of the league. It's crazy. And wins above replacement. He's like one of the most valuable players in baseball so far. Kelly. He's not even the starting catcher. Like, well, I don't know if the Cubs have a starting catcher, but it's really Amaya. But I think the only thing I really noticed, Brendan, is that he's hitting the ball in the air a lot more than he has throughout his career, and seems to sort of just be selling out for hard contact in the air. I don't know if that's intentional. When you look at some of his rates throughout the year, that was the only real thing that jumped out to me as this is different than the production he's given in the past. But you've gotten such solid production out of these two guys. And as we've seen in years past, it's critical to get that production. Now, obviously, Carson Kelly was not hitting in the bottom of the order in parts of this series, but to get that production from a position that you were not really counting on for any level of production is a massive lift to this team.
Listening to you in the background as I'm looking at his Baseball Savant page, I've never seen this. I swear to God, anecdotally, I've never seen these numbers. His walk rate, 100th percentile. His strikeout rate, 98th. His hard hit rate, 90th percentile. He's the best in every single category.
Jed's league. I don't know what to tell you.
I was listening to Dustin Kelly on Sahada and Patrick's podcast, Northside Territory, and he was talking about the detail that Carson Kelly uses in his approach and how he talks about the game similarly to how you see hitting coaches talk. Or even he used Justin Turner as a comparison, even though we were just low on them. But it's showing that he knows what works really well for him, and everything he does has intention to it. And although you see him as a 30-year-old and you think, well, he's 30 years old, this can't be for real. These numbers are so extreme, Corey. I honestly have never seen anything like this. I don't even know if I should believe that he's going to take an extreme downturn. I've never seen these types of across
he's going to rock a 250 WRC plus for us.
I guess he might, but at the very least, I could see him being one of the top offensive producers. When you have extremes like this, where everything is so outside your normal expectation, you can't ignore that. Those are such huge blips. Just a matter of okay, well, how real is this in terms of a 500 plate appearance sample? Is it going to be Aaron Judge numbers? Probably not, but there's probably going to be a happy medium. Probably not.
Yeah.
If it is, we're winning the World Series. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So again, like the things that jump out to me, hitting the ball in the air 7% more than his career norm. And I was just looking at it. I'm having
Is that what it is? That's what it is.
brain.
Thank you, Sean.
No, I
Look
mean,
at-
that's just one of those things. He's also not swinging at
crazy.
pitches outside of the zone. So his
Yeah.
career,
Chase race 97th percentile.
yeah, his career chase rates, swing percentage of pitches outside of the zone around 24%. This year it's around 13%.
This is crazy, Corey. Look at those numbers. Crazy.
Yeah. So we got to hit our second ad break here. I don't know that we have more to add on that, but just worth paying attention to. It's obviously been a huge performance. To what degree he can keep it up, obviously not at this level. It would be one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen. But there might be something there that at least you can hope that he can continue to be a productive bat in this lineup. So we'll hit our second ad break here, and then we'll come back and keep talking Cubs.
Okay, just like your favorite team needs a home court, field, or ice advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. And Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus only on flooring every single day. We've all been to those big box stores. You wander endless aisles, and somehow you're hauling all these materials home, looking for an installer and coordinating everything yourself. Empire Today lives and breathes flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ballgame. With Empire Today, you get clear, upfront, and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule those installations as soon as the next day. Nobody likes to wait. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. CHGO listeners can get a $350 discount when using promo code CHGO. Yes, you heard that right, a $350 discount with code CHGO. Restrictions do apply. Visit empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. Whatever the sport, the app to bet is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. Bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season. Spreads, props, futures, or in-game, Circa Sports has it. Fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, Brendan, we are back with you here. If you're in the live YouTube chat, hop in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Hit that like button for us. Make sure you're subscribed to the CHGO Cubs specific YouTube page. If you're listening on your podcast on your drive to work or anything on Friday, good morning. Hello. We're happy to have you as well. Let's talk about third base, Brendan. All and right. I got to tell you, at this point, I think we need, I don't know if this is like a perk of being a season ticket holder, but they emailed me and said, you need to be ready to play third base. That's how many guys they're trotting out there. They're going to try everything. So on Thursday.
Are you ready?
No, I never play. Yeah, like I worked in baseball.
I know you never
I played hockey growing up. Like you don't want me over there at the
Okay.
hot corner. No, you can maybe stash me in the outfield type of vibe.
All
but
right.
On Thursday, we get Nicky Lopez making his debut at third base, and that is the sixth player the Cubs have used. We are barely into the month of May, literally freshly into the month of May. 6 different people at third base. Now, rarely, Brendan, very rarely actually, do I like to kind of pat myself on the back for how I approach some of these conversations and stuff.
Well, I wouldn't say rarely, but we'll go with it.
I actually did it earlier in this episode with Seiya Suzuki, but separate issue. Rarely, very infrequently. Like if you go back to our offseason discussions, and a lot of it paired with Alex Bregman, but not specific to Alex Bregman when those rumors were going around, probably every week you and I talked, I repeated that one of my number one concerns for this team was that if Matt Shaw got hurt, if they felt they only wanted him in certain matchups, or as ended up happening, they felt to prioritize his value as a future player for this organization and his development, he needed to be sent down and not starting every day. They did not have a quality option to play every day at third base. That doesn't mean John Birdie's a fine player. And I think he's been fine for this team. Some defensive lapses, but he also made some solid play. He's fine. But to start every day at third base for a team that is trying to get in the playoffs in a real season for the first time in closer to a decade than further away. I said that every week. And so to be sitting here watching this, Gage Workman kicking the ball around the field, getting DFA'd, like
he made an
Nicky
error in his
Lopez
first White
is in
Sox game, by
there.
the way.
John Birdie's making an error at a crucial time. It's
Vidal
rather frustrating because it does feel
Brujans.
like one of those things. And I wasn't alone in this, of course. It wasn't like the most like, wow, what a crazy take. Like it's a pretty obvious take. But it is frustrating to be sitting here watching this like series after series, like, gee, third base seems to be a bit of a problem. So I know you were looking at some of the stuff Matt Shaw is doing at AAA. We don't know their internal thinking. They're obviously they had something in mind when they sent him down, and they likely won't bring him back until they see that adjustment made. But this, as we talked about, some of these issues, even as the Cubs were playing well, they're not just going to go away. And this third base one is not going to just go away if you're rotating a cast of sometimes fine, sometimes questionable type players.
We have 2 months to figure out what this team needs to propel themselves into August, September, and hopefully a deep October run. What I don't want to happen is to spend money on third base when that money can be spent on the pitching. Okay. My number one priority.
I agree with you there.
My number one priority is to fulfill that third base value, even if it's marginally below league average by July. I need that money spent on the rotation. I need that money spent on the bullpen if there's still going to be some breaking points. So what does that mean? That means Matt Shaw needs to go through this adjustment phase, or Vidal Brujan needs to pick it up. Nicky Lopez, new arrival Nicky Lopez, needs to be like somewhat average-ish, or we need to see John Birdie take that next step and show some of the value he had shown while with Miami. All possible. Unlikely though, right? So
and before you jump further into Shaw, I do want to reiterate, like John Birdie's been fine. He's been an above league average hitter so far. On Wednesday in the game the Cubs lose, he was the only one on the team that had an extra base hit.
He started a World Series game for the Yankees too at third base.
At a bad time, but it's just the reason I throw him in there is what can you count on for a guy that I believe is 35 or 36 for the rest of the year if you're asking him to play that much? And it just is. Third base seems to constantly be the area in our post game or when we're chatting, like third base again, third base again, third base again.
It's one of those areas though that there's so many ways forward they can address it that I'm just in a standstill waiting period. Sure. A lot of fans, even in this chat, are saying, let's just call Shaw back up because he can play a competent defense. It'll look like, let him just go through his adjustment phases at the big league level. And believe me, I've been a proponent of doing that for a lot of guys, but I've also been a proponent of using those experiences when they do fail to go back to AAA and exactly fix the reasons they failed. And right now, Matt Shaw has not done that at the AAA level. The stats at the AAA level look great. If you go to his Fangraphs page, you're going to scroll it. You're going to see, oh my God, he's striking out 4% of the time, right? In 40 plate appearances. And for me, that's like the number one thing I look for, a strikeout rate. The explanation for that is, well, he's making contact against pitches outside the zone. And he was doing that at the big league level. His contact rate was better at the big league level than I had expected, but his zone contact rate was worse than I expected. What this means is that there was an intention to make more contact, right? And I like that in a vacuum because he succeeded in making more contact, but it's not the contact we want.
Yeah.
So that needs to change at the AAA level. And when I see that 4% contact rate, I'm both encouraged and still disappointed is not the right word, but I'm still waiting for him to make that next adjustment phase. And the next adjustment phase will be seeing the power come. Okay. So I like the rapid extreme seesawing he's showing. I like that he's not striking out that much. To me, that suggests he's got an awareness of himself where he can make contact. And two, we've already seen the fast twitchiness. We've already seen the home run. We've already seen the power output he's shown. So I love that we're seeing the other side of this like contact approach.
Yeah.
Balancing that is when he'll get called up. And
yes.
I think it's possible he can get there. And we've seen it for several guys in the past where it has balanced out.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like these adjustments are usually a process. And so hopefully he's, as you're pointing out, kind of in the go to the other extreme direction, and then you kind of rein it in
I mean, this is
specifically.
a crazy
Yeah.
extreme. In
Well,
my years
and
following guys,
it's
you never see something like that.
yeah, it's very easy to see too. Like just even following along with the Iowa Cubs on Twitter or whatever, you'll see the tweet come across that's like Matt Shaw doing Matt Shaw things, but then you watch the video and it's like a squibber through the infield, and you're like, okay, like, yeah, good, but like, I don't know if that's like proving the adjustment that we're needing to see. So it's a process. And this goes back to when I had this sort of concern about the position in the offseason. They have to get it right with Matt Shaw. And so it's easy to, even if he's hitting well, watch an error from John Birdie. And he made some nice plays earlier in that game too, like turning double plays and things like
I
that.
feel like I watched, not to diss John Birdie, but I feel like I watch him and just doesn't look fluid at third base. I don't know. I just don't like the way he looks at third base. I'll be honest with you.
It's a feel thing for you. I don't know. But with Shaw, they can't respond to that and say, you know what, forget it. We got to get Shaw back up there. We think he's a better defender. We can't do this with these guys anymore. They have to prioritize Matt Shaw developing into the hitter and the player that they dream him of being, not just for right now, but for the future for this organization.
Did they do that with Pete last year? Just stick in that point, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this, right? They're the best team offensively in the National League right now, right? So they didn't do that for Pete last year. Bellinger broke his ribs. Counsell said he's up for defense. He's not ready. Counsell said that.
Well,
right.
All right. Yeah. So I guess, that's a quick check on me there, but
I'm just saying.
No, it's fair. It may depend on each player. Shaw isn't nearly the defender that Pete is. So, maybe different there, but.
Hi, gentlemen. I honestly want to chime in because listening to you guys last year, you guys talked about how Pete kind of needed to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And do you feel like Shaw needs to be making those mistakes now in May so that when he finally hits his stride, it's in June and August rather than calling him up in August and needing him to hit his stride?
Well, I would be very surprised. I don't think at all the timeline would be that far. I think the question now is just, is it right now? As people are kind of clamoring for it. It's an interesting decision. The Pete comparison is a good one and sort of contrast with how I would kind of immediately think about it. But I guess the reason I feel that way is because they made the decision to send him down so quickly. And so that to me suggests they'd really like to see something, and they did not want to see that happening, those adjustments specifically at the major league level. So that's kind of why my initial instinct, different than Pete, is, hey, if they pulled this plug that quickly, I don't know if they want him failing like that right now at the MLB level. But no. I don't think the timeline would be that long.
I don't think so, too. And the Pete timeline is a good comparison because it does align with exactly what we saw last year. Early season, adjustment phase, going back to Iowa, another adjustment phase. Pete's made 3 adjustments over the past year. We do know what they're trying to work on with Matt Shaw. And so there is some background story by our good friend Jordan Bastian, where Shaw was discussing the changes he made last offseason, and it was centered on anticipating better velocity at the big league level. So he was getting his swing started faster. And so he was already anticipating these changes, and that's what he was working on during the offseason. Now it's gone to in a different extreme where he's getting, started faster, but he's just swinging at everything. He's swinging at pitches outside the zone where he's making that above average contact, right? So what we need to see is just dialing that back and having that happy medium. And I would not be surprised if we're talking about Matt Shaw, damn, like in a month from now, and he's back up and he's made those changes. It's part of the process too. I think Pete's a perfect comparison because he went through those extremes, dude. And we've seen this with every single former top prospect. I'll give one quick example before I throw it back to you. But Javi Baez got called up in 2014, had a 55% whiff rate, one of the worst stretches in Major League history. He had that Gary Sheffield bat waggle. I was obsessed with that. I was convinced he was not going to be a guy next year because that was so crazy. But what I learned over the years is that that was a representation of his athleticism, that he was able to even get to that point. So I look at Shaw and that leg kick. I'm thinking, there's no way that's going to work, right?
It's
But
very divisive.
it is, but it represents, okay, well, something's like crazy there where you don't see often, and there's something that signifies that he's unique and it's going to maybe translate. So I use that Javi Baez experience as like an emotional pillow to think, okay, we could see something similar in Matt Shaw on adjusting and finding that like happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how they plan to address it. Obviously, at the moment, it seems to be a bit of a rotating carousel. I would expect John Birdie to continue to get the lion's share
Is that
there.
your preference? Do you want to see someone upsize John Birdie, or do you want to see like more Vidal Brujan, maybe higher ceiling guy?
I think at the moment, I would keep going with John Birdie for the most part.
Yeah.
Just because I think he gives you something on offense at least. Steals bases, has been a solid hitter so far this year. And so I would just defer to that. And the defense has been mostly solid. That's just a bad time for that one. And
I do want to ask Sean if he's, still has his mic. Nicky Lopez, third base defense. Like, does he look okay when he was playing third base for the White Sox? I don't know. There he is. Like, is he okay at third base? Is he going to crow hop the throw?
Yeah, I mean, it's not Nicky Madrigal bad that he's going to need to charge up. But yeah, he's way too small to be playing third base. And we were desperate enough to be playing Nicky Lopez at shortstop last year. So we really saw the entire gambit. He's best as a second base bench piece.
Well, he's not going to play second base. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he should honestly probably not be a major leaguer anymore. God bless. Love.
I think they're just trying stuff, but yeah, I would be rocking with John Birdie. It like I said, it's fine, but it's just one of those things that it obviously represents at least somewhat of a risk until Matt Shaw is up. But I think Shaw will make those adjustments and be back and showing the promise that we had when he broke camp with the team and was getting the opportunity. So. I want to switch to some of the pitching, Brendan, as we get toward the last 13 minutes or so. First of all, you did a really good breakdown on Colin Rea and kind of what he's been doing differently this season. So we don't need to go into the extreme with him, but we will be taking a moment to applaud his effort on Thursday and just how he has been so far this season. He picks up the win on Thursday, 6 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 2 strikeouts, but his ERA sitting at 1.46. I mean, this is just a statement of what happened in this game on Thursday, but Colin Rea outdueled Paul Skenes. That's what happened.
That should be
That's not a spin. That's really what happened in this game. And more than anything, what is so important to me about the way Colin Rea has stepped into this rotation, and obviously it's been a growing process, but to go from a guy who was a swing man, the long man in the bullpen, expected to maybe make a spot start, maybe piggyback, like that type of thing, to transitioning back into now just being in the rotation, needing to go every 5th day, and to go those 6 innings on Thursday. We've talked so much about the lack of length from this rotation as a whole, and especially when you lose Justin Steele, one of the guys you would have been really relying on to do that for you consistently. Like for Rea, not only to be pitching this well, that's obviously the real standout takeaway is he looks great out there and he's getting great results. But to get worked, back, stretched out that quickly and to be able to give this team length, it's so important. I tweeted it earlier this week, but like especially heading into this Pittsburgh series was so many 4-inning starts, 5 1/3, 5 2/3, 5 2/3, 5 1/3. And if you're going to ask any bullpen in the league to cover 3, 4, 5 innings a night, spoiler alert, everyone's going to hate the bullpen. That's just how it's going to go. It doesn't matter who's in the bullpen. So a massive effort from Colin Rea here to deliver that start. And he looks great doing it.
Amazing doing it. It represents the general idea the Cubs are trying to accomplish with their pitching. So what I mean by that, and Lance Brostowski had a great segment on his own podcast where they were discussing, and he was showing that the Cubs lead the league in four-seam fastball usage, even though they are among the slowest four-seam group in the league. That is, though, representing what they are trying to acquire. Okay. So I'm going to show a graph here that moves into Chris Flexen and what they're trying to accomplish with a Chris Flexen signing. So before the season started, we were picking up Brad Keller, we were picking up Chris Flexen, picking up even Matt Festa, DFA Matt Festa, but a lot of these guys had unique traits. And what I saw with Chris Flexen was that he had a similar fastball shape as Brad Keller. So if I just ask my computer, hey, find me every single pitcher that looks like, Brad Keller or Chris Flexen or Justin Steele, all those guys, right? So I asked the question, who does Chris Flexen look like? And among the top 5 was Brad Keller. So that signals, okay, well, you have these four-seam fastballs that look similar generally in what's called feature space. That means they're targeting a certain fastball shape. And this brings it back to what they did with Colin Rea, right? So these guys have a general tendency to cut their fastballs. They've had so much success recently in guys who cut their fastballs. And what they've been able to do with Jameson Taillon recently and Brad Keller and Colin Rea is that they've been able to take some of those natural mechanics and just amplify them to create a little bit more carry. And we've seen that with Colin Rea's success. Chris Flexen gets called up. He has a very high release point. He also has that unique cut type fastball. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what are we going to see in the data when he does come back? It's not to say, oh, Chris Flexen's going to be a guy, right? It's the narrative of what they're trying to accomplish. It's insight into their process. So when I see Chris Flexen eventually throw for the Cubs, I'm looking at that four-seam fastball shape. I'm thinking, okay, does it look different and in the same pattern that we've seen Colin Rea's fastball change, that we've seen Jameson Taillon's fastball change? And are we going to see more carry for guys who have those similar mechanics?
I think that was the most Brendan graph you've ever shown.
I know it's a stupid
data,
graph.
Arrows. There's a whole separate bottom portion with numbers in it. That was, I think, the most pitch doctor thing I've ever seen.
The takeaway is not the numbers, right? I'm not a numbers guy, by the way. I really am not a numbers guy. The takeaway is that Brad Keller's fastball and Chris Flexen's fastball share feature space. They're not identical, but they have features that are resembling what the Cubs are trying to acquire.
Yeah. So again, want to transition, I think, to some of these bullpen guys, as you're already alluding to.
We got 7 minutes.
But yeah, massive effort from Colin Rea. Hope, it sounds like it's just a cramp for Shota, but that obviously was okay, let's all freak out or get ready to freak out kind of moment. But transitioning to the bullpen, and I know you want to talk about some of these guys specifically and like their stuff and like what the Cubs are doing. Brad Keller, Drew Pomeranz, like some of these guys. I do want to start in pointing something out that hopefully isn't going under the radar. But I believe it has been 10 straight outings for one Ryan Presley without giving up a run. And quietly, I feel like, now sitting at a 2.08 ERA, his FIP certainly not matching that, closer to 5. So suggesting maybe some regression possible. But I think a lot of that going to be buoyed by his beginning of the year. And again, credit to them kind of just like sticking with that. That's an example, kind of the opposite of the Justin Turner situation in a way where it's like, you have an older guy, upper 30s, a lot of the stuff in his career showing at least some decline. But they had a vision there. They believed there was something still in there, and they didn't let a couple bad outings at the beginning of the year scare them off into not using him. Now, will he be the closer come the end of the year if the Cubs are in the playoffs, etc.? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but he's really settled in, and that's just a really nice development.
5 strikeouts in, what is this? 5 strikeouts in 12 innings pitched. Yeah, the ERA is great, right? But this is too much contact. You mentioned a couple of weeks ago where he had like no whiffs, I think, for a few outings.
Yeah.
The whiffs need to come. So I love that
absolutely.
he's getting the run prevention, right? But the manner in which he's getting the run prevention does not appear stable.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
the pitches look good. The pitches look similar to last year. Fastball even may look slightly better. So there is encouraging signs.
We'll take any contributing bodies in the bullpen.
My ideal outcome for Ryan Pressly is that he is a 6th or 7th inning guy in August. That's what I think realistically we can expect. And if that's the case, it means we resolved the late inning leverage guys, either with Porter Hodge or Brad Keller is there, or an outside the organization acquisition.
Well, yeah. So, now, like, I just wanted to note that it's just nice to see the results in a better place, given how the year started for him. But talk to me about some of these more, I think interesting guys the Cubs have brought in and what stands out to you about some of the guys that have kind of more recently joined the Cubs bullpen or were some of these projects that we were talking about throughout the offseason.
Well, it appears as if like baseball is one big project now. So it's not just the Cubs doing this when they pick up relievers that don't have good numbers and they turn into success stories. But for Drew Pomeranz, that's another target, right? Drew Pomeranz has not pitched since 2021. The question is, well, why is he on this team if he's not pitched since 2021? Injuries, age, so on, 36 years old. But what he's shown so far in his few innings with the Cubs, fastball looks the same as it did in 2021. The shape looks the same. Drew Pomeranz is huge. Look at him on the mound. He's massive, right? High release point, a lot of carry, north to south curveball. Everything is basically just straight, either up or straight, either down. And he's showing those same patterns. Now, Brad Keller is maybe the poster child of the Cubs pitching projects this year. I'm going to show one last graph, this heat map from Baseball Savant. Look at this. Look at all this red over here. This is Brad Keller's percentiles. We have a 96th percentile hard hit rate for Brad Keller. Ground ball rate, 91st percentile. Strikeout rate, 75th. Chase rate, 87th. Average exit velo, 96. Everything is red for Brad Keller. Corey, you joked at me when the offseason started, like, I'm going to talk about Brad Keller. I'm like, well, he's kind of interesting over here. I'm not taking credit for myself because I've done that multiple times with all these different projects, but it just gives insight to like what they're trying to accomplish, right? It's a story. It's like, okay, here's this pitcher. Here's all of his flaws. Here's how the Cubs are going to approach it. And in this case, they've succeeded in it. I think it's worth telling that story because then when Chris Flexen comes in or the next guy comes in, you can remember these stories and that process to think, okay, well, maybe the same can be applied here.
Yeah. And we talked about it through the offseason too. Like if you're not going to play in that top end reliever market or you try to, and they choose to go to the Dodgers, see Tanner Scott, and sometimes that doesn't work. Our friend Evil Wax in the chat mentioning how Devin Williams has been terrible for the Yankees. Like even best laid plans in that regard sometimes do not work out.
I love how Milwaukee just like
changes
offloads their relievers.
But one of the things we talked about was if you're not going to do that, you have to be leading the league or being one of the better teams at identifying exactly what you're talking about. This is a guy who has not had success, but we see something in his fastball or his curveball, or we think we can tweak this to get a better result. And to see the early results. Now, some of these, obviously, you need to see a more sustained presence from them. You need to see them continue to do it, a larger sample, but to see them even finding some success in identifying these guys, playing around with them and turning them into contributors in this bullpen, it's a necessary thing for this organization to be doing and be good at.
Hi, Pitch Dr. Brendan. I also have a question about Pomeranz and Keller. That's weird. Two big boys, 6'5", but they're terrible with extension. We flashed, Keller's here, 11th percentile, only 6 feet of extension for a 6'5" tall guy. And Pomeranz, even worse, 5.8 feet of extension, which is even lower than Keller's. Is there anything to like low extension for these guys?
I think they're outliers. So your question is, well, tell me if that's good or bad. Well, it's hard to tell because no one has those types of traits. I don't know, right? What we know is we see success, we see results. And I think sometimes, myself included, we look at all these numbers and we're like, what are they talking about? Is he just getting outs? And I think with what we're seeing with Keller, what we're seeing with with maybe Pomeranz, it's like it kind of just doesn't matter. It just might be a background feature that they're not necessarily targeting.
All right. We got to get out of here, but
Okay.
we'll have more for you next week. Big series coming up. Another tough stretch for the Chicago Cubs coming up. 3 with Milwaukee, then they've got San Francisco, then they've got the New York Mets. So just when we thought the kind of rough part of the schedule was done, we've got more of it, but the Cubs have been up to the task so far. Let's see if they continue to be. We'll talk about more of this stuff and break everything down next Thursday. We'll be back with you same time. And we appreciate your support. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.